To being traded. I mean, that's not a good thing, but I just want to be where I want to, and I like it here. I mean, it hasn't been as planned, but I definitely want to be here. We have a real chance to win the NBA championship, and I want to be a part of that.
I'm not sure, Chris, how much of that you believe, but whether or not the Cavs want to trade Isaiah, do they need to trade Isaiah? Does he offer them the most in return at this point?
No, because Isaiah's value is kind of what it is right now with that team. No. He's just, look, he's a guy recovering from a bad injury who doesn't defend at anywhere near a high level. And he's got a manageable contract, which is the only thing that makes him appealing. It expires at the end of the year. He's not the guy that teams want. But frankly, there's not a lot on that roster that teams are clamoring for. I reported yesterday that they're still talking to Sacramento about a George Hill deal, but Sacramento's been offered the crap burger that is Iman Shumpert and J.R. Smith, and they're like looking back going, no, we don't want any part of that. So if you look up and down that roster, outside of LeBron James, who already said he's not waiving his no trade clause, and the Brooklyn Nets pick, which people inside the organization have told me they're not dealing, there's not much that they can.
Kevin Love is an asset that teams would like. He's a player.
He's okay. He's okay, but it's not like if you deal a Kevin Love. Look, you're talking about Isaiah Thomas, and you replace Isaiah with Calderon, who they were good with in December. Other guys, you deal Kevin Love, you better get what Kevin Love's giving you back. For as much as we malign Kevin Love,
right. That's part of the reason why they're struggling.
Yeah, well, I mean they were struggling. I mean, look, they were struggling. I don't think that Kevin Love going out has led to them struggling, but he is a big part of what they do offensively, why they're so good. You better get something better than Kevin Love back in a deal.
Right. I don't think they're going to trade Kevin Love. My point is he's a guy that if he were available, teams would like. He's an all-star level player.
Well, he's available. Everybody's available on that team right now. It's just that they're not getting the kind of offers for Kevin Love right now that they got in the offseason last year.
IT says, I'm sick of being traded. Sometimes you got to look in the mirror, man. Like everyone, when he and Boogie didn't get along in Sacramento, everyone blamed Boogie. And listen, Boogie's got some emotional issues. I think we all know that. But it looks like Isaiah Thomas can be a tough guy to be around. Then he goes to Phoenix. That blows up immediately. Works well in Boston when everything revolves around him. He goes to Cleveland, and best I can tell, since he's been playing, he's called out Kevin Love. He's called out the team as a whole. Yesterday, he called out the coaching staff. And he has been, on a per-minute basis, the single worst player in the NBA. So I agree with you. He's
Other than that, though?
He's not a big asset right now. But they might be better without him at the moment.
Well, I don't think it's fair to criticize him the way he's doing, because I believe that the injury is more traumatic than we know. And you're one of the few people that has been consistent. When you were first on this show, you said, listen, he's damaged goods. Obviously, Cleveland, in the physical, his body showed to have more damage. They went back to Boston. Boston compensated them even more. But you thought that there was question if he'll ever return to the player that we had seen
at least the
last 2 years. And for me, I'm only going to criticize him so much until I see the player. So when you're not the player, you see the frustration. He's also playing for a contract. He's in a new environment. Being in Cleveland is not the greatest environment. Even though you might think LeBron is the greatest player, they have had locker room problems for a number of years. It's hard to be on the team with LeBron with the amount of tension. And imagine where IT is in his career, his own personal struggle. So he thought he had a home in Boston. They gave up on him. Now he's going to Cleveland, and he's not healthy. So I'm just going to hold back some of the criticism because of what you told me, that he was injured far worse, and he might not never be the same type of player.
Well, I think. Let me just say, I think Isaiah can at some point get back to being the player. I don't think he can do it this year. I think there's too short a window for Isaiah Thomas to get back in the mix. But as much as look, physically, Isaiah's going to keep getting better. I mean, we can't say, look, he's coming back from a hip injury and it's going to take time, and then be surprised when it's taking time. Like, this is sort of, you got to give him until March to kind of see what he is as a player. The problem, and it's emerging as maybe as big a problem for Isaiah, is that he keeps acting like he's a Celtic. He keeps talking like he's a Celtic. And that's chafed a lot of people in that locker room.
Explain to me what that
means. Basically means, he's talking like he's the franchise player. He's the man on that team. He's saying stuff like, when the going gets tough, we kind of go our separate ways. He's just consistently talking after the game. He's calling out his teammates. He's like, that's not the kind of stuff you do when you first come to a team. You can get away with doing that in Boston. They didn't love it all the time we did that in Boston either, but you can get away with doing that in Boston with the franchise player. When you're in Cleveland and LeBron's the man and Kevin Love's number 2, it doesn't rub players the right way when you talk like that.
And the reason I agree with you, Chris, that I can give him the benefit of the doubt for the on-the-court stuff because of the injury. And I talked about emotionally all the things he went through in the last 9 months. Tragically off the court and the emotions of leaving cities. I get that. But you need some self-awareness to know that given all those things, I am playing the worst basketball of my life. So I am not the proper vessel for criticism.
Several other Cavs are too. Shumpert's hurt. D. Rose is barely playable. D. Wade is old. All right.
JR's been terrible. Jay Crowder's been terrible. Those guys aren't saying those things, though. Those guys, if JR was out here saying, we go our separate ways, Ty Lue's not drawing up the right plays, Kevin Love, you really sick, then those guys at least, while they're not playing well, are quiet about it. And, by the way, not Jay Crowder, but JR or Tristan, who hasn't played well, those guys at least were part of a championship team.
All those guys have contracts, too. All the JR got paid. Tristan got paid. So when you're under the pressure, like this is real, all right? You're coming from an injury. That's real. Him getting adjusting to a new environment. That's real. What he went through with his sister and Boston giving up on him. Those are all things that lead you to make questionable decisions. And he's trying to survive. That's why he would say, man, when things get tough. So you start to see those things when professionally you're not happy or you're not healthy on the court.
Meanwhile, Chris, 3 o'clock is quickly approaching. We usually around this time, at least a couple days before, you start hearing things. We're not hearing much. Is this the kind of thing where maybe by 2:58 some big deal is going to kind of drop in the Cavs' laps? Or if we don't hear anything by now, it looks like it is what it is?
I don't think so. And this is basically league-wide as well. I don't think anything major happens before the deadline. I do think that there is a high degree of probability that they get George Hill. I think Sacramento's trying to bleed them a little bit. I think the Kings, with De'Aaron Fox, the way he's emerged, they'd like to get off George Hill's contract for next season. I think that probably gets done before 3. But one thing that's stopping teams from making any significant offer, including Cleveland, is that there's a strong feeling that the buyout market this year is going to be more robust than it's ever been before. Because, you know, we know the top of the draft, what that looks like. And we know next year the lottery rules change. So this is the year that teams are bottoming out. Now, the NBA said, look, we're monitoring you guys with how you're tanking. You can't sit players. That doesn't mean they can't cut guys. That doesn't mean they can't just waive guys. So teams like New York, teams like Atlanta, teams at the bottom that are chasing that top pick.
Who are a handful of these players that we might see come available?
It's tough to figure out. I mean, Marco Bellinelli, Ersan Ilyasova. Like, there are guys, maybe New York, Courtney Lee. Like, there are some guys. It depends on how much money guys are willing to leave on the table. But because teams
DeMarre Carroll is a guy.
DeMarre Carroll, possibly. But because teams are trying to have that race to the bottom, they could go to a lot of players and say, we'll buy you out. So why would a team consider, say, a first-round pick for Tyreek Evans if you know, they can get somebody comparable for free in a couple of weeks?
And lastly, quickly, because teams are going to be racing to that bottom, that Nets pick that you have to hold on to, that's right now 7th overall, easily could become 8th. 9th, because the Nets have no incentive to tank. Everyone else has incentive to tank.
Wait, are we agreeing? Like,
what?
No,
we're not agreeing at all. They shouldn't.
I've been saying the Nets are going to finish 11th. That's my prediction.
They should trade the Nets pick.
You
got to hold on to it.
My only course of action.
Colin Sexton out of Alabama is going to save the team after LeBron leaves. It's insane.
Here's what happens when you guys agree. We have to go to a commercial break. It's just too out there. We are going to see you a little bit later on. Don't go anywhere. Coming up.